Welcome back to Pagan Valley, everyone. Tonight's video is an exciting one for me, I have to admit. We are looking at the return of Gemini Home Entertainment, an analog horror series that I believe is one of the greatest on the platform. But Gemini was also the first horror series I ever talked about on this channel, and it's exciting to revisit a topic that really catapulted Pagan Valley into what it is today. There are two new videos that I want to cover tonight, as well as some posts in the channel's community tab as well. I know a lot of you have mentioned the Discord, and after scrolling through it, I didn't really find anything that wasn't already posted to the community tab. However, I won't jump feet first into these videos immediately, since there may be a lot of new people who haven't seen or heard of Gemini Home Entertainment. So we'll start with a quick refresher. But I invite you to please watch this series for yourself, and if you are still a little lost because it is very confusing, then you can go watch my analysis of the series so far. There are two videos and I'll link them in the description. This will be like a part 3 of where we left off in those, and they were really fun to make, so I hope you enjoy them. But before we deep dive back into the horrifying nightmare that is Gemini Home Entertainment, I want to plug our Patreon real quick. I know I don't shill for it a lot, but if you want, for $3 a month, you can become a Pagan Valley show investor and have your name at the end of our videos. Your support is helping our team fund some projects of our own, like our short film called Backstage, which is really exciting for our channel. And no support is greater than liking this video and subscribing to Pagan Valley so you can stay current with our latest content. With that, let's return to the nightmare of Gemini Home Entertainment. When we left off last time with Gemini, we had a lot of unanswered questions, but also received a lot of information about what is happening in the world. To quickly summarize, Gemini Home Entertainment is a series of public educational videos that you would find in libraries or stores back in the 1990s. However, the subject of each tape seems to be tampered with to show the viewer a much darker reality of their world. I guess the simplest way to describe the events happening would be an alien invasion of some sort. The entity we know as Iris is a foreign living body that is hosted within our solar system. We have been shown that it has the ability to move from planet to planet with ease and alarmingly quickly. But its attack on Earth has been extremely subtle, infecting the Earth's underground with a living virus called Deep Root Disease. We are unsure how the first trace of the Iris made it to Earth, but we have been shown the spawns of Iris do lurk in the bottom of the ocean, specifically in Mariana's Trench. So maybe the first contact was made there so humans wouldn't notice. From the ocean, the alien infection has spread to the mainland through the underground, choosing to root itself in caves and forests where it would have ample time to spread and grow. Once developed, Iris turned its enormous red eye towards humans, specifically ones within the woods. Now, the deep root disease within humans has been shown to take some different effects. Some become walking, zombie-like creatures called woodcrawlers, who attempt to lure more prey into the woods. That can't be good. Other times we were shown the decomposition of human tissue due to the infection that kept the human alive but connected to the iris. So far pretty simple, right? Well, it's going to get a lot more confusing. This introduces us to a tech company called Harbinge Technologies, who have developed a tool called the Deep Sleep Visualizer. This device allows dreams to be recorded in snapshots, and unfortunately, there is some tampering with the visualizer due to the iris. Or another theory is that the visualizer is designed to only connect with the iris. Either way, the dreams of the test subjects show photos from the point of view of creatures controlled by the iris. Now, since my coverage, I have a theory that these mannequins that appear in people's dreams are monsters of the iris. However, when dreaming, humans see them as faceless mannequins. At this point, there are groups of humans aware of the iris's infection. However, faced with an unstoppable force, there seems to be some desperation among them. First, we'll talk about Moonlight Acres, a summer camp that also has some secret activities being ran behind the closed doors. In the storm cellar of the main lodge, a shelter was made in order to outlast an attack made by the iris. We were shown this in storm safety tips and in the Lethal Omen video game. During our exploration of the physical camp in the video game, we were shown that campers are designated to use the sleep image visualizer. Also in our camp info video, we were told a story about well-dressed men visiting the camp all the way back in 1935, and that they would meet with the camp administration every night. One night, a deal was made, and the strange men never returned again. Also during this time, skinwalkers were being spotted around the camp by young campers. Now, there are a lot of theories about who these strange men are, but I will elaborate on them once we get through the newest videos. But we were also shown a list of camp counselors and their affiliation with the iris's infection. Some have been in contact and some haven't. With research underway on the iris, a space probe was launched to see the entity literally in the flesh. With a locator beacon, we traveled through the living body until we reached its core mind. Once there, the camera on the probe revealed that inside the mind of the iris were the same images captured on the sleep image visualizer. Now, I know this is a very rough summary of events up to this point, and I encourage you to go back and watch everything I mentioned up to this point, but that should be enough to carry you through this video. Before we look at the first video, I want to take a second to look at a post in the community tab for the channel. During this break since Crusader Probe mission, we were given a post called Delays. In the image, we see a newspaper article mentioning how several Gemini tapes have been purchased by the public. Obviously, the public saw what we have been seeing and, not believing what was being shown, had them returned. When questioned, Gemini denies having any involvement with the tampering of the tapes. I mentioned this in my other videos, but we still don't know who Gemini Home Entertainment is in alliance with. Denying the tampering and offering to fix the issue makes it seem like they are innocent and just caught in the middle of the iris's invasion. But it's so innocent that one has to wonder if it's all an act, especially since they keep putting out videos with the tamperings anyway. On Christmas, we also got another image, but this one seems to be a season's greetings letter from Moonlight Acres. On the letter, we see some familiar staff names such as Barry Johnson and Dorothy Bates. The letter invites the reader to a Christmas party on December 24th. Now, if we go back to the Christmas Eve party video from a year ago, we see some familiar names. Our three victims to the woodcrawlers and the iris were Alex Whitler, Jack Dean, and Mary. But the more interesting part is the newspaper behind the letter. According to the very little text we can make out, it seems to be a missing person list. We can see one of the missing people is a woman named Mary Dean, but the other photo is cropped out. It mentions a date of Christmas Eve and a major weather event. So what we have been shown in the post was an invitation that one of these three received before the events in the video. After their disappearance, we are seeing the missing person article for Mary Dean, Jack Dean, and Alex Whitler. But why did Moonlight Acres send this invitation that basically sacrificed the kids to the Iris? Well, we're going to find out, so let's start with the first video that was posted 2 weeks ago called Shifting Tendons. I want to make a quick note that this thumbnail is the first to not have the Gemini logo on it, so we can assume that what we are about to watch is not distributed by Gemini, which will be made clear in a moment. The video begins with a tape recording of what looks like a remnant of a deep root disease infected cell being observed under a microscope. Also, in the first few seconds, we were flashed an overlay of an organization called the WDH. We have seen this logo before. The video Deep Root Disease was produced by this organization called the Warner Area Department of Health. So this footage we are seeing now is coming from inside the government department without being distributed by Gemini. We see this trace of the iris reproduce under the microscope before our video is spliced with footage from a deep sleep visualizer. This confirms the theory that this device wasn't just designed for recreational use, but for the use of the government. Now it's being used on a man named Barry Johnson, who back in Moonlight Acres' informational video is labeled a camp counselor, meaning that the counselors at Moonlight Acres are either working for the WDH, or the WDH has just straight up kidnapped someone to run the test. In Barry's first image taken during his deep sleep, we are shown what looks like a slot on a prison cell door opening. On the other side, a human face stares back at Barry before shutting the slot again. After, we are shown the logo for Moonlight Acres and what looks like a blueprint for a new addition to the family camp. Called the Holding Room, this eerie space is designed like the storm bunker from Storm Safety Tips, including the sphere in the center of the room. But it looks like the basement of the camp's lodge is being renovated into a prison cell with a slot on the door. Finally, we get confirmation that this is where Barry Johnson is being held, a staff member of Moonlight Acres we saw in the camp info video. Barry is the assistant activity supervisor at the camp, and he has been taken to the basement of the lodge and put into the deep sleep visualizer. Moonlight Acres is absolutely a front for the WDH to conduct research on deep root disease, but why put a staff member in a holding cell? We are also shown a new name, Levi Jacobs, who is the head of security at Moonlight Acres and what we can guess is the WDH. Our tape cuts again and now we are given a date, July of 1991. And Barry has been in the holding cell for 6 days now into quarantine. I'm sure we can all assume what Barry has contracted, deep root disease. Our security guard Levi attempts to film through the feeding slot on the door, but Barry can't be seen. Next, the WDH shows a human diagram of what has taken place inside Barry only 6 days in. After another month in the holding cell, it is now August of 1991. Another 21 days has passed with Barry being infected. This time Levi doesn't open the feeding slot, but we can hear Barry groaning and flesh tearing from behind the door. Again, our human diagram returns and shows the physical alterations being made to Barry until he is turned into this. This is a living plant we have seen in previous parts of the series. It was first shown in the Lethal Omen video game, where in that game, the plant has a human face in it. And in Wilderness Survival Guide, we were shown an info card of this plant, which is called Nature's Mockery. We know that it spreads the iris's infections because it causes all the symptoms we've seen in the series. But now we know that they just don't spring up from nature. The iris can only make them with humans. Now it has been another 32 days since the last check-in on Barry, and we are shown the holding cell before being told, staff prepare to enter the holding room following estimated incubation time. Staff are equipped with protective suits to avoid contact with deep root growths. When the staff enter the room, we see a picture of a book Barry was reading to pass the time. Douglas Adams' Mostly Harmless. The cover has a striking resemblance to a visual Gemini has used, with an arrow being pointed at planet Earth. But for all of you who aren't nerds, this is kind of a cool reference. Mostly Harmless is, I think, the 5th book in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. However, if I remember right, this book is way more depressing than the others, which are pretty goofy. But I'm sure there is some weird connection between the creator of Gemini and some part of the book. The staff continue to examine Barry Johnson, who has turned into one of the red tendon monsters we saw in the home invasion video. Except now the WDH staff are going to try and communicate with an infected Barry. I won't interrupt this part until the end, but we are going to get a lot of references from through the series.
Do you know who you are? We can hear you.
Alright, well, just like in my part 2 video, I said that even though humans become these pile of tendons, they don't actually die. They keep living, but as a vessel for the iris. But this woman interviewer is another familiar name. If we look back at the season's greetings card sent to the 3 victims, we can see her signature on it alongside Barry's, Jeannie Davison. However, Jeannie didn't come up in the camp info video like Barry did, but we did see an Alec Davison, so perhaps this is a spouse or family member of his. In an attempt to learn more about deep root disease, Jeannie and the team try to interview Barry after he has become nature's mockery. Even after trying to get a response from the still alive Barry, it becomes clear that it isn't really Barry who's responding. I also want to mention that the voice for Barry is the same voice we heard in Monthly Progress Report, when our research team first contacted the Iris using Regnad computing systems.
We can hear you.
Our video ends with Barry attacking Jeannie and the team and telling us that something alive came out of Barry's old body. Now Moonlight Acres is initiating their safety procedures for the camp. With Moonlight Acres on lockdown, our video ends and we can move to the second video called Wretched Hands. Just like before, this video was not distributed by Gemini and seems to be an internal Moonlight Acres staff video. At the very beginning, we are shown a small block of text, which says, "Intended for internal use only." The following segment utilized a live feed of Lake Montebank in Canada during its broadcast. We are also told by the Moonlight Acres staff that this live feed happened 25 minutes before attack, which we can assume is the attack of Barry Johnson. We are shown a live feed with the weather report of a forest probably near Moonlight Acres, when our feed zooms in to show us this. We know the Iris's monsters can pop up from underground like we saw in previous videos, so perhaps this is the underground root system connecting to Iris, coming alive right before Barry attacked. Our video then brings up an old letter sent back in 1946, which if we remember is about a decade after the mysterious well-dressed men were appearing in Moonlight Acres. The letter reads, "Curtis, come down to the camp this weekend. Fulton and I have devised a plan on how we can continue to uphold the deal without giving in to these beings' abhorrent demands. Richards has seen a bear lurking near the boys' cabins. We will go out and shoot it. If the statue wants a sacrifice, it will have to settle for this. I will be a pawn no longer. Curtis, I tell you this with complete certainty. If I could do it over again, I would never have made that deal. Signed, Glenn Arthur." So a lot was revealed to us. First, we know the name of the camp director who made the deal with the mysterious men, Glenn Arthur, as well as other staff at the time. We also learned some aspects of this deal that was made. The staff agreed to offer sacrifices to a statue in the park in order to appease monsters in the woods. Are these creatures the Iris in its early days, or completely something else? What we do know is that Glenn is willing to hunt a bear to use as a sacrifice in hopes that it appeases these creatures. But what is he refusing to sacrifice? The next letter shown to us says this: Wretched hands tap my window. A stranger's fangs scrape the walls. We can bet that these beings Glenn spoke of probably weren't satisfied with the bare offering. Before we move on to the next part, I want to take a look back at the Lethal Omen video game. Even though in the series we haven't been shown this sacrifice statue, we do see it in the game, and one of the secret endings for the game and the true ending will have us tied to the statue before we are sacrificed. Trying to kill me. Oh, okay, well I guess I'm not going back. Dang. Ugh, y'all terrifying. I hope you know that. Oof. Oh, really? No, you're gonna sacrifice me? I hate you. I hate you all. Oh, please. Oh, no. Oh, that's so terrifying, that sound. When we wake up, we are trapped in the mind of the iris, which is focused on Earth. There are connections being made, although you really have to be thorough to make them. So the next part of our video is back in the present, or should I say the early 90s, where a survivor of Barry's attack on the camp is recording the aftermath. When zooming in, the WDH can make out the traces of human remains within the forest canopy, showing that characters have fully been infected and integrated into the iris. We see Bay Nadler, Lloyd Michaels, Kristen Hoyt, Darcy Ogden, and then we see Mary Dean, the girl victim from the Christmas party where she, her brother, and a friend all were attacked. And lastly, we see Glenn Arthur, the camp director from all the way back in the 40s who we saw was attacked in his last letter. Lastly, our video says that it seems like humans were deteriorating faster once they were mutated with deep root disease, and that the organism has lost all resemblance of a bear. With that, our second video ends and we can start throwing up some more red string on our wall. This mention of a bear has been shown to us before this last video. It was shown in Wilderness Survival Guide in a diagram of what not to do around animals. At that time, I thought this was nothing more than just a scare to build up tension, which it probably was until now. But now it's a reference to this event that happened in 1946, when a bear was sacrificed to the iris, instead of what we can guess was supposed to be a human camper. In anger, the iris attacked Glenn and the camp. Then in 1991, the test with Barry Johnson also resulted in another attack made by the iris. And in our last video, the remaining Moonlight Acres team are comparing both attacks, which both resulted in humans mutating into the iris's wide root system that is in the forest. Which leaves us with one more question to ask. Who are the well-dressed men from the 1930s? Well, from inside the Discord, there are two answers that fans have come to. The first would be that the well-dressed men are woodcrawlers being controlled by the iris. If this is the case, then the iris saw that a camp full of humans back in 1935 would be a perfect spot to hunt them. Probably in an attempt to make it easier for itself, the iris disguised itself as humans it had already mutated and routinely visited the summer camp and its director, Glenn Arthur. Eventually, Glenn caved into the demands of the iris and made a deal. We don't know all the details of that deal, but we can make a guess. I believe the deal in this theory was that Glenn and the camp staff would willingly sacrifice campers to the iris, and the iris would let them live normally as it stayed in the woods. This sacrifice would be called the Lights in the Sky event, which was advertised in the camp information video. Eventually, Glenn and some of the other staff changed their minds about the sacrifices and decided to try and trick the iris. As we read in Glenn's letter, the staff would kill a bear and place it on the statue instead of a human. The iris clearly was unsatisfied with the switch and immediately attacked Glenn and the camp, which we read in Glenn's final note. Now, the other theory is what I think is actually going on. In this theory, the well-dressed men are government agents visiting the summer camp. As the theory goes, these agents were well aware of the deep root disease infection and the iris even earlier than 1936. These men are a part of a coalition of scientific researchers trying to understand the iris and later try to stop it. A lot of these companies we have seen through the series are a part of this group of scientists, such as the WDH, Moonlight Acres, the Crusader Project, Regnad Computing, Harbinge Technologies, NAMAD, and Optica Video. I don't think this group includes the production companies like Geneva, however. When these agents approached Glenn at Moonlight Acres, they revealed to him what they knew about the iris and the infestation in the nearby woods. They would make a deal where Glenn and the camp would operate normally, but secretly the camp would be a research site studying the infection. To make it easier, a lot of the scientists, like Barry Johnson, would just become counselors to make it easier to blend in. But these scientists are not as noble as they seem. Just like what they did to Barry in 1991, the scientists learned that the iris reacted more positively to humans. So in an effort to learn more about it, the scientists willingly sacrificed human campers. Over time, one of these scientists, Glenn Arthur, discouraged the others from no longer feeding the iris humans and convinced them to try giving it something else, a bear. And just like in the other theory, the iris didn't like that and lashed out against Moonlight Acres and Glenn himself. But the reason I like this theory more is that it makes it seem like the research we have been getting snippets of has been gained through decades of hard work and using all forms of technology, from space exploration to biological mutations to deep underground mining equipment to manipulating visualizers to interspace telecommunication devices, and even as far as video games. And now in our timeline, we are at a new starting point. What happened to Glenn in 1946 has happened again in 1991, and the iris has only grown stronger and more numerous in time. And the worst part, even when this secret research is bleeding into Gemini's tapes to sell to the public, no one believes it. And that is where we are left at the time of this video's release. Clearly more is coming, and I'm ready. You know what, I think I'm even willing to go as far as to say that this is my favorite series on YouTube. And to me, it is the best use of analog horror this site has to offer. Yeah, Local 58 is great, but I feel like Local 58 paved the road for something like Gemini to go as far as possible on. No other series do I plan on going into so much detail about. Hell, I'll do it video by video if it gets any more complex than this. But that's enough dick riding for now. All I have to say to Gemini is that we're ready for more. Show us what you got. With that, this has been Pagan Valley, and I wish you all a good evening.